Gavin's given me a good lead in because my time at the bar was spent in Australia, which has the older system of contempt of court. So I've had basically the influence of the law of the United Kingdom in Australia ended completely in 1986 as a result of the passage of the Australia Acts through both the United Kingdom Parliament and the Australian Parliament. So you need to imagine what the law was like in this country in 1986, and then you get quite a good picture of what Australian law is like. And then you also, and this is one of the reasons why that legislation was enacted, you also have to rip out anything from the European Union as well. When Australians complained about the European Union stuff appearing in Aussie law, in English law, and they didn't know what to do with it, they weren't criticising the EU. They were just saying, this is no point. This is useless to us. We have to stop this. And so you get a picture of an older world, what I'm going to describe to you. Now, the underlying logic of contempt of court in Australia has always been the core of it is to protect juries and to protect individual jurors as well. So you hear the stories about you can't report this aspect of a trial, or you can't say this about this person, or so on and so forth. And you sort of think, well, what's that got to do with the jury? And that's actually a relatively unusual application of the law of contempt. I will give you a story of a much more commonly application of the law of contempt when I was a pupil barrister, which is when you're sort of a little baby barrister and you're just starting out and you're in a chambers and you work for a QC or a KC these days. One of the things that you can do with a jury that's been impaneled and during the course of a trial is take them to the scene of the crime, basically. And the technical term for this in the law is known as a jury view. And what happened, and there's all sorts of very strict rules about jury views. You cannot have, for example, counsel can't talk to the jurors. If the judge is there, any comments that must be made to the jurors must be made by an officer of the court. In this country, it may be a bailiff or something like that. In Australia, or the United States, it's a court official. In Australia, called an associate. In the United States, called a law clerk, who has to do this very, very strict rule. Anyway, while I was a pupil, what happened was a local TV crew, and I was a barrister in regional Queensland, a local TV crew decided to film all the jurors while they were walking around a location where there had been allegedly a murder had been committed. And not only filmed them all from a distance, so people were a bit suspicious there was something funny going on, but you couldn't really see. But of course, modern cameras, they could film up my nostril from the back of this room if they want to. And anyway, it was broadcast that evening, all of the jurors walking around this site and every single one of them identifiable. And of course, that was a contempt ruling. It aborted the trial. The jury was discharged. And the journalist who was responsible for this and the cameraman spent a week in the cells full of mosquitoes in Rockhampton to use the expression in Australia, purge their contempt. So that's a much, much more typical example of the way the law of contempt will be used. And it will be used in the similar way here, because you have views in this country. Jury views are a very, very important part of a trial when the physical location is relevant to facts and issue in the case. Another smaller example that you will sometimes see is it can be governed under the jury legislation in some countries, but in many Australian states, this is also part of contempt, is when employers will not release an employee to to serve on a jury. This is very, very bad behaviour. Sometimes it'll be the Jury Act, but in Queensland, when I was in practice, it was dealt with through contempt. And the man who was my pupil master, he's deceased now, but he later went on to become Supreme Court judge. He ordered the employer in question who did this into the courtroom in shackles. No. Juries are actually really important, and Australia is a rich country. So, for example, the employer is fully compensated for the salary of the employee. For example, people who travel to Australia notice it's a filthy rich country. It's like going to the Middle East, and you really notice that. So they are properly compensated in Australia. You don't have the arsiness that you see over here. So keep that along with Gavin's information and Max's information, which is very much about all the stuff in newspapers and Lucy Letby and Tommy Robinson and all these high-profile cases, that's only a very small part of it. A really big part of contempt of court is protecting the institution of the jury, which, in my view, is very much part of the crown jewels of the common law.
Thank you, Helen.